Well, good evening and welcome to Scrutiny Panel 3 meeting. It's our first meeting. We have some members joining online. The regulation on members joining online is they will be counted as present in the attendance section, in the attendance of the minutes, and their attendance would not be counted as attendance in relation to Section 85, paragraph 1 of Local Government Act. Speaking at the meeting, attendees whoever wish to speak should speak through the chair one at a time. That's for an orderly meeting to take place and enable accurate clerking. And we have Joanne Dempster, Assistant Director of Children's Social Care, in attendance as well. Any apologies?
No, Chair, I have not received any apologies for absence.
Okay. Yeah, we only have Councillor Kwanzaa who may join us online. Any urgent matters? No. Matters to be considered in private? No. Okay. Any declaration of interest? We are now on item 6, panel operations. That's we need to agree the terms of reference and appointment of non-voting advisory members and panel work program. Can we agree on the term of reference? It's
yeah, it's
yes, yeah.
Councillor Alexander has that.
Yeah, Councillor Alexander, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's about the panel work programme. So I don't know if you're there yet.
Sorry, the work program.
we haven't
Sorry, we haven't got. We're not up to there yet. We're just going into it now. We have. Sorry. Yes. We. All we know is one is Church of England. That is a statutory education co-ops. The one Church of England does his representative, one Roman Catholic does his representative, and 3 parent governors. But I don't have the names yet. That's all. Yes, that's that.
Anyone from the community, any
that would be a voluntary. Yeah, these are statutory. The 5.
Yeah, so the statutory representatives will be invited if there's an item on the agenda relating to the provision of education, and we'll invite them, which is what we've done in the past, and see who will be able to turn up for that. But you're right, there's a wider thing about co-optee members, and I suppose that's for the panel to consider, or perhaps to make suggestions to the chair outside of the meeting.
Yes, Councillor Crawford.
As when we know what we are going to cover throughout the year, we then should be in a position to invite specific governors, whether it's whichever school age is appropriate. So do we have our named co-optees, or do we have a pool from which we can invite for this year when we know the programme?
So we don't actually have a pool of representatives. And what we do is what we've done in the past is make direct contact with the diocese and invite them to nominate somebody, but there's not a pool of members. But you're right, once we know what's on the work programme, it gives us that advance notice to get that ball rolling.
So we can discuss this when following our, when we know what we're going to cover. Yeah, what our programme is going to be.
Yes.
Can I ask, possibly from last year, of the statutory co-optees from last year, would they continue or?
So we didn't actually have any statutory co-optees who were invited to the panel last year, from my recall.
Right.
But we did have an education scrutiny panel operating about 3 years ago, where we did have representatives from Roman Catholic Diocese, Church of England, and we also had 2 other faiths represented as well.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay. So are we going to discuss any voluntary sector co-optees now, or we can do it later outside the meeting?
So you might want to ask your members to think about groups that they might want to invite, and perhaps to contact you outside of the meeting, and we could progress it then rather than do it now. Is that...
Sure.
So perhaps by the October meeting, we could have a fairly strong list together.
If that's what you come up with.
Yeah, sure. Yes, Arban.
Yeah, Chair, leading to that question is having read all these minutes, previous minutes of the committee, I was thinking there are various organizations like children have disabilities, educational needs, and they have mental health problems. That's what I think I was thinking. If we are talking about the same subject matter in this committee, I think we should consider these organizations to come as co-optees. They have a vast experience working with these communities, and we will be beneficial great from their experiences. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will consider this after the meeting, sometime during the week, and then we'll pass it on to the officers. Okay, thank you. Now we're going into the next one, is the work program. Yes. Yeah. Just to find where we are. Is any suggestion to populate our work program, and also we need to find out if there's going to be any field work as well during the year. Any suggestions from the panel?
I have a suggestion.
Yes, Councillor Alexander, yes.
I think we should do something on young carers, and definitely on missing people in care, missing young people in care.
Okay. Carers, missing. Okay, anything else? Anyone else? Councillor Crawford?
I had two on my list. One was young carers. So I think that would be interesting work. And something with regards to early help under the umbrella of Ealing, you know, it takes a town to look at our early years, our nurseries, and I'd like that perhaps to be, I gather there might be some consultation with some early years, regarding early years. So perhaps that could be put later in the work programme. So sort of like after Christmas. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Anything else? What's-
Care leavers would be one
Yeah,
area I'd like to look
care
at, because
leavers,
that's- that's people coming out of care as well,
yeah,
as it's big subject on the Ofsted report too.
okay.
I mean, we should mention that we haven't been able to speak to the head of children's services, and that's going to be an important part of the work programme as we formulate the work programme. So that is expected soon.
Yes, yeah, that's where Robert South is not here yet, so,
Yeah, so-
when he comes, obviously, we'll get more, we'll know more about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One more point I was thinking, as the Ofsted report states about the recruitment of staff, the Ealing borough is still need to focus on it. Can we consider that about employment or employment issues? Probably they are hiring agency social workers. That is really quite expensive. We need to analyze how many staff do we need in the future, or are they filling these vacancies? Or why we can't fill these vacancies? That's what I was thinking.
Is that related to children's services?
It is related to children,
So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
If you read
Right,
this
yeah.
Ofsted report, they
Yeah.
are clearly stating
That
Yeah.
is,
about employment,
Yeah.
yeah.
The Ofsted report actually states that Ealing is a favoured place to work.
It is, it is.
Which is very encouraging, actually.
Very
It's a
encouraging.
very difficult profession.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's something we can ever relax about. We need.
No, no,
I think it's a very good point. I think it's an excellent. We can look at that and study it, and perhaps study it across the borough as well, so
Yeah.
see how the differences are in the different parts of the borough.
They have highlighted where we are not meeting the targets. Yeah, that's what we need to fill those gaps. Yeah.
okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, something should we ask about whether there's a programme to maintain and improve on the Ofsted
To maintain the-
and improve on the
Yeah.
front Ofsted as well.
Yeah.
It's fine getting it, but we're going to lose the year's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chair, Councillor Valeen has
Yeah.
something more to say.
Yeah, Councillor Wally, Alexander.
Alexander, sorry.
I was going to say meeting 3, it was in regards to foster carers. I was thinking that we could also look at kingship carers and kingship young people, and also young people that are not in education or employment or training as well. We could look at to Chair.
Yes. Thank you.
Needs.
Councillor Kwanzaa. You can't really see that.
Sorry, yes, I'm
Oh.
just coming. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm so sorry. I'm on my phone, so it just maybe that you can't see me. I started to type in the chat. Thank you, Chair. Cultural competence in terms of how professionals work with children from diverse backgrounds. And I think this was delivered certainly a few months ago with the Victoria Klimbe Foundation. It was very effective with one of the panels I attended last term. So I was thinking we should consider doing something more around that cultural competency.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put it in the chat as well. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Crawford?
It may be one too many, but I'd like us to have regard to, number 62 in the Ofsted report, where it talks about the range of performance information is not identifying gaps in some areas, such as performance in the fostering service. But we can pick up that if we have an update on progress on the Ofsted report, that can, the chair can make sure that that's included. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And I never know how to get rid of this little thing. I think that's enough.
We got through all that.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Yeah.
Some of those points can be put together with an,
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Can I just on the work program that you can which is here, the last meeting is conspicuously, there's nothing on it at the moment at all. That's presumably because it wraps up the year. No. Okay, so can we? I mean, the last meeting at the moment has nothing on it. Is it designed to?
No,
wrap up the
sorry,
summer?
it was like that because in the work programme planning meeting we held, we didn't at that point have something for
content?
that. But I think you've kind of now covered
All right.
it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So yeah. Okay.
Have we can we consider now anything about field work if anyone wants to do it, or like any field work, any visiting some places to see how these sectors work?
Personally, I would like to have these ideas scoped, have a list of scoping, and then the first thing of the next meeting, we can then look at where we want to visit and when we want to visit, prioritize accordingly.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Chair, I agree. Because the very first meeting,
Yeah.
once we know probably next meeting we can decide.
Yeah, Councillor Kingston.
And just on a practical level, we could be potentially visiting places where there's vulnerable kids. Do we need if any checking any prior DBS before?
Sure, we'll take that into concern.
Yeah.
When everything is organised.
Just so it shouldn't be a problem, but yeah, just to consider.
As long as we don't, we're okay as long as we don't talk to them, I think. It don't have to be DBS or whatever it is. As long as you don't, you're not include, you're not actually engaged with them and you're not on your own. As long as we're with the chair and officers, I think we're okay. All right. So I'm never going to have that go through that again. They went through my whole history. And it took about an hour, and they wanted to know how I'd arrived at my adult age, having had so many names. They did a thorough job, and it was a laugh a minute.
Yeah, just thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so that is with item 6. I think we can go on to item 7 of state report.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. There's some hands still up online. I'm not sure. Any hands up online, or the legacy hands?
Thank you. Now we can go into Ofsted report, and I ask John Dempster to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If you're ready, I'll make a start.
Sure, yes, please, yeah, thank you.
My name's Joanne Dempster. I'm the Assistant Director for Children's Social Care Services. So I'm coming to Scrutiny to present some of the highlights and the findings from the report that was recently published by Ofsted, which details the findings and recommendations from the recent inspection of local authority children's services that took place in April and early May this year. So in terms of what I will be talking to you about, I'm going to tell you about the judgment and the improvements that were highlighted in the report, and the three main areas of practice that they focused on when they came to inspect the services. So that's the experience and progress of children who need help and protection, the experience and progress of children in care, and the experience and progress of care leavers. So those are the three particular areas of social work practice that they are looking at when they come to undertake their inspection of children's services. They also look at the impact of leaders, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well in this presentation. So the inspection dates were between the 22nd of April to the 3rd of May of this year, and that was our period of on-site inspection activity. So that's when Ofsted, His Majesty inspectors arrived in Percival House and spent time looking at records, speaking to social workers, speaking to children, speaking to foster carers. And the lead inspector was Tom Anthony. He's the author of the report that you've been sent. In terms of the judgment overall, it was very good news for us as a service in terms of the overall judgment for children's services. Overall, we're judged to be good in terms of the services provided to children. But when you look at the four main areas that are considered and graded in the process, there's one particular area where we still need to do work to reach a good grading. So the impact of leaders on social work practice with children and families is graded as good. The experience and progress of children who need help and protection requires improvement to be good in some of the areas. We'll talk about that as we go through each section. The experience and progress of children in care graded good, and the experience and progress of care leavers was very strong and was graded good. Overall, ELIN have moved away from their previous grading of requires improvement to be good for the children's services. So the improvement since the last inspection. So the last inspection took place in 2019. And since that time, this inspection recognises that the corporate leaders share a determination to continually improve the quality of service provided to children and families. And recent developments include the creation of a dedicated assessment service, which sits at the front end of the service behind the MASH, which is our first point of contact team. An effective programme of recruitment and retention has been undertaken and created a mostly permanent workforce. So over 70% of our workforce are permanent, but we still have work to do, particularly in our help and protection teams, to increase our numbers of permanent workers. Many of the areas identified as needing to improve in the 2019 inspection have been strengthened. So that's been recognised in this particular inspection period, and our caseloads across the organisation are well managed. So these are the main improvements that you'll read about in the Ofsted report. In terms of leadership, Ofsted found that leaders are reflective and forward-looking, and meaning that challenges to improve and move services forward and work with partner agencies to do that are strengthened, and appropriate action is taken to address anything in terms of improvement work needed in our placement sufficiency space is moving forward. There's still more work to do to ensure consistent, timely and effective social work in some areas, help and protection being the main area in terms of identification of risk, responding to risk and making safety plans in order to mitigate against risks. But leaders have a coherent plan to address these issues. Areas for improvement in terms of the report and what the report tells us we need to be focusing on is the identification of risk in some cases and effective responses to risk. Strategy meetings, which are our risk assessment meetings where we come together with our partner agencies to assess levels of risk to children and devise plans to create safety for children, need to be strengthened. Multi-agency planning for children at risk, which goes hand in hand with strategy meetings, needs to be strengthened. Improving safety for children missing from care and children who are vulnerable to exploitation needs a focus. And increasing our fostering capacity and our placement options for children is an area where we need to do work with intensity and with pace to try and increase the number of options for children who need to come into the care of the local authority. Ofsted have found that we need to improve our pace and our impact of activity. So our work streams to address the areas that we know we need to work on need to move forward and need to be driven with pace. Management oversight of kinship and family placements is highlighted in the report as an area that we need to think about, and improving our support for young carers is also very important. So some of the areas you've identified for potential work in the work plan are coming through quite clearly in the Ofsted report in terms of areas for improvement and in this list. So in terms of the experience of children who need help and protection, I'll take you through the 3 sections of social work practice to just highlight some of the main strengths and some of the areas where we know we need to do some work. So in terms of help and protection, this is our area that's been graded as requires improvement. But when inspectors came and looked at records and spoke to social workers and managers, they found that decision making in response to our initial contacts at the front end of the service in the integrated front door is appropriate for most children that they looked at and considered. And it leads to the right support being provided, and parental consent is carefully considered at the front door. So this is a strength. A consultation line is run within our front end of the service, and this enables agencies to seek confidential advice about safeguarding matters and appropriate steps to address concerns. They can get that advice outside of making a formal referral into statutory services, and leaders, partners value the opportunity that that provides. When the threshold for statutory provision is not met, early help support that is provided to children and families is underpinned by the views of children and families, and the early help service works very well with families to achieve change outside of a statutory process. Our response to domestic abuse is strong in Ealing. So there's a really well developed response to domestic abuse with specialist practitioners located in the front area of the service, and appropriate interventions are identified to minimise harm. Partner agencies attend a daily multi-agency risk assessment conference And that means every day there is information sharing happening across the multi-agency network about victims of domestic abuse and any persons of concern, perpetrators of domestic abuse too. And safety planning takes place around those particular families with that specialist lens. This was identified as a strength by Ofsted. I've spoken a little bit about strategy meetings. So in terms of our strategy meetings, for some children that they looked at across the whole of the service areas, so help and protection, children in care, leaving care, strategy meetings were not convened swiftly enough for some children. And the delay in the holding of strategy meetings meant that those initial actions taken to safeguard children took some time. Ineffective use of strategy meetings is an area we need to take from the Ofsted report and really work on, and that work has already started to try and strengthen and standardise our identification of risk and the quality of our meetings to pull together our networks of professionals to make safe plans for children. So the work has already started in this particular area to improve this stage of intervention. That said, when Ofsted were with us, they did not find any children that were left in immediate situations in terms of risk of harm. Our child protection and child in need plans were deemed to be good, so focusing on the most important things to make children safer, with defined timeframes and responsibilities for professionals to take forward work with the families. Regular meetings to review progress were seen, and child protection conferences were well attended by relevant professionals, with conference chairs speaking to parents beforehand, before the meetings took place. Support for disabled children in Ealing was very strong. So inspectors saw examples of social workers who have an in-depth understanding of disabled children's health needs, using different methods of communication with children to try and encourage children to share their views and include their voice. Social workers had a good understanding of children's medication and their complex needs, and had detailed multi-agency risk assessments that coincided with each individual child's needs. So the Children with Disabilities Service received really positive, strong feedback in this inspection. Children who go missing is an area for improvement, as I've said at the beginning. So our response to supporting children who go missing is not consistent. That was our takeaway from this inspection. Workers have been creative and flexible to undertake return home interviews, which is an essential stage in trying to understand why children go missing. But there's an absence of consistent multi-agency safety planning around our young people and children who go missing regularly. And that's an area of work that we need to work on and strengthen and standardise across all areas of the service. Our response to homeless children is strong. So since the last inspection, a lot of work has been done to introduce a process and a pathway for responding to young people who present as homeless. So 16, 17-year-old young people who come to the service for support because they may be experiencing homelessness have a very clear pathway that is followed with the at-risk of homelessness panel, who hears the circumstances for each individual child and makes bespoke multi-agency plans in relation to homeless young people. This is an area that was identified in the previous inspection as needing some attention and focus, so it's really moved on, and there's distance travelled in this particular area of practice. Young carers were identified as a group of children in this inspection that are not always made aware of the support and services that are available. Sometimes young carers can be hidden in society, and we may not know that children or young people are involved in caring responsibilities for their families. So there's something about how we respond to this feedback from Ofsted and raise awareness of the existence of young carers and the support that is on offer for young carers in Ealing. There are good services available in Ealing for young carers, but the awareness and the identification and the response and the uptake of the services is an area that we really want to look at. School attendance is referenced in the Ofsted report. So in terms of children who need help and protection, and the local authorities' response to supporting school attendance for children at a strategic level is good, with some examples being that the introduction of Therapeutic Schools initiative has had a positive impact, and attendance levels have improved in the schools that participated in this initiative. Overall attendance levels are rising in accordance with the evidence that Ofsted saw when they came, and persistent absence is reducing in schools. Children missing education are a group that are identified quickly, and checks are undertaken to identify children's whereabouts who are not in school and are missing education, and efforts continue for unidentified children. So these were the findings when the education specialist inspector took their time to look through our procedures and our processes for helping children missing education. Experience and progress of children in care. So when decisions are made to apply to the court for children to come into care, Ofsted looked at a sample of children's journeys who'd recently come into care and found that decisions had been made in best interests of those children and had helped to keep them safe. Skillful direct work has been undertaken for children entering care, and for most children in care there are positive outcomes. Work with unaccompanied asylum seeking children was identified as a really strong area of practice, as well as the work with children with disabilities. So care for unaccompanied asylum seeking children, it was identified as a significant strength. Children are warmly welcomed, they make progress, they quickly get the services that they need, and they feel safe and supported. Kinship care is a priority in Ealing for children who cannot live safely with their birth families, and viability assessments of carers for children in extended family arrangements are detailed. So a lot of work is done. We have a specialist kinship team where assessments are undertaken of connected people to children to maximise potential for keeping children within their families. The track record around children exiting care in Ealing in terms of their outcomes and where they live at the end of their care experience is strong in terms of the number of children that either return to their birth family or live with relatives or connected people. So there's a lot of children that have exited care in the last 6 months who have gone to live in birth family or kinship arrangement. Support for foster carers is positive, with foster carers telling inspectors that they feel well supported, that they have good relationships with their workers from their teams, they're complimentary about support from social workers and value the out of hours support that they get from the fostering service. A real challenge on a national level and not just within Ealing is the availability of care placements and a range of options for children who need to come into care. So this was identified as an area where we need to really focus and operate with pace around our strategy to try and mitigate against the impact of placement sufficiency challenges. So, for example, the impact of not having enough in-house foster carers means that some young children who are living in residential care are impacted by that in that way. So what we want to do is increase our numbers of in-house foster carers and have less young children living in residential care and living in family settings. There's use of unregistered provision for some of our young people with particularly complex needs and additional emotional needs. Very small number of children live in unregistered homes, and the oversight in terms of the checks and balances of those homes needs to be standardised and needs to be consistent and robust. So processes have been implemented already to track the compliance of these settings with basic health and safety, staffing arrangements, registration plans with Ofsted, and oversight of matching of children in these settings with each other. Statutory reviews in terms of the independent reviewing service. Independent reviewing officers know their children well and they have a stable presence in their lives. They've known their children for some time. They've known their care journey and they visit children according to their needs. So there's good support for both children and carers from the independent reviewing officer service. Children in care's relationships with their workers. So social workers were deemed to have good relationships with children. Inspectors saw good examples of direct work and time spent with children from their workers. And independent visitors and advocates provide valuable support to our children in care. So they have an independent person that they can speak to and talk to outside of their allocated social worker in many instances. Safety planning for children in care. So again, this goes back to the help and protection grading. So in this space also, safety planning for children in care was inconsistent. And not all of the plans around safety for children led to timely multi-agency action. So again, we can see we need to look at and improve upon how we pull our multi-agency partners together to work with us around mitigating risk for all of our children in need, children subject to child protection plans, and our children who are in the care of the local authority. The experience, the educational experience of children in care is overall positive, and with tailored academic support and enrichment activities identified for most children. And this helps children make good and sustained progress in their education, helps them settle and progress, and particularly for children changing schools, there's support available, and the change of school is planned for. And in terms of our personal education plans, there's areas to strengthen around not just completing those documents, but making them meaningful. So making a plan for young people's education who are in care that is purposeful, that meets their needs and is meaningful and operates for them. It's tailored to where they're at in their age and stage of development and helps them to improve. So we're already looking at personal education plans. There's a regular panel set up to look at progress, not just in terms of completion, but outcomes as well.
Chair, shall we ask questions now because the report is quite lengthy, otherwise we will miss out so many things. Joanne, what would you like to be done? Do you think we should ask the question?
I think so.
I think so. It will give you a break. Also, I think we will
So if you
explore a little bit
are
more.
open, yeah,
Graduate.
Yeah.
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 okay,
That's
sure,
fine.
Councillor Dean.
Yeah. Joanne, first of all, I now understand, having seen children's pictures, of what age we are talking about. Having read the Ofsted report, I don't know what to mean by children. What age group we are talking about?
All age.
16 to 17, you mentioned about the young people. When the young adults starts, from what age? What age group actually we are talking about in this report? Children means it's a 0 to 25 or 0 to, is it
It's 0 to 25.
0 to 25?
Yes.
Okay, so these are children. Yeah, because 16, 17, we can talk about their needs, not in education or employment.
Yes.
Yeah, right. You mentioned somewhere, talked about the statutory support. Could you explain it to me? What do you mean by statutory support? What are we actually providing? What are we talking about here? Finally, now at the moment, we have read a couple of jargons. You also mentioned about IRO. We don't know what that means. We won't understand this report unless we are clear. I think in the future reports also, we would like to know the full statement rather than in jargon or in short, in full abbreviation, please. Yeah. Yeah, I might ask you more questions, but at the moment, we have.
Okay. Thank you. So we are talking about children from birth, sometimes pre-birth, if we are aware of them before they're born, through to 25 for our care leavers. And the way that we deliver our services is related to the level of risk and need for each child. So in terms of our children in need, those are our children where families work with us on a voluntary basis under the Children Act, and we deliver statutory services to families with their agreement. Then we have child protection processes. Again, these are services delivered to children under the Children Act, under child protection processes. And then we have our children in care who come into care, and they can come into care at any age under 18. Yeah. And then we have our care leavers to whom we have responsibilities and duties to provide services for children 16 and over up to the age of 25.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Crawford, then we'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. So sorry, one, two, come back. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You state about the child protection meetings. Child protection meetings is only for serious cases, only, or you are holding these meetings for every child who is under our care?
So for children where the level of assessed need and risk of significant harm is felt to be high, those children may be made subject of a child protection plan. So for those children who are assessed at being at that level of risk of significant harm, an independent service, which is the Independent Review and Officer Service, yeah, would chair child protection meetings and decide, with the evidence presented by the multi-agency network members attending that meeting, whether a child needs to be subject of a child protection plan or not.
Thank you.
It's for not for every child.
Not every child.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Crawford and then Councillor Alexander.
Thank you. Hopefully the points I'm raising can be progressed into the schedule of work. So there are 4 points I'd just like to raise. The issue with young carers, I'd be interested in knowing what is planned to identify further young carers in our borough, and whether we are having, being extra zealous in working in partnership with our schools and youth, if we, whatever youth provision we have. Number 58, with regard to domestic abuse, where children have been impacted, it says that joint working with housing officers is especially impressive. I'd like to just make a note that this report relates to what up to the findings of May, and some casework that I have seen recently, and I hope you'll look into it, shows that the understanding of with housing, I would say, is not appropriate with regards to all the work that's been done with the police. There's enough evidence, so perhaps we can talk about that. But there's a lot to learn, I think, from that that piece of casework, and that's how we learn, isn't it? Yeah. So and then care leavers. I was on the looked after children, I still am actually this year, and I found it really interesting committee to work with, meeting fabulous young people, and I was actually very impressed with the support they had. But there are 2 things that they brought up which I noticed in the complaints. One, and it's sort of been touched on in the report, where it says, number 42, a shortage of move-on accommodation. Well, what we found out with some of the complaints of the service was that there wasn't enough visits. Social workers were not actually visiting with the young person to go and look at the accommodation, and they agreed it wasn't suitable. But I would really like to see that it's absolutely vital. Any parent would want to know where their young person is moving into. We want to know that they go to university, and we certainly want to know that they leave home earlier. So I think that's something that would be to look at. And lastly, what was brought up as well was the consistency. Our young people really needed that consistent support of a social worker. So the retention of social workers is really important. And I don't know how you feel, but maybe that consistency is more important, and actually more vital for the care leaver, that age group. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry to take up so much time.
Okay.
Okay. In relation to the questions that you've asked around young carers and what is planned in response to the feedback for young carers, so we need to look at how our services are delivered. At the moment, our support and identification and services to young carers sit under our early help area of the service. A strategy is needed to outline for the borough, for the partnership, for workers working with children, what a young carer is and how to identify signs of a young person perhaps undertaking caring duties, what to look for, what to ask, and then to be signposted quickly and accurately to the services that are available in the borough. So a whole strategy is required in terms of pulling that together and having something that we can then go out to partners and deliver in terms of awareness raising. So I would say that would form part of our planning, but has not been formalised as yet. So we need to put that together and we need to have that launched and in progress and in train. Then what we would do is monitor to see how many young carers are subsequently identifying through that activity and use data to help us understand, are we finding more young carers and are we satisfied that young carers have all the information they need about their rights and entitlements and the support services that are out there to help them. So that's the question around young carers. The experience of families that you described in relation to domestic abuse and housing, I would need to take that learning away with me and understand more about that particular experience, and certainly feed that back into the system. There will be instances where we need to keep working and we need to keep raising awareness and keep our vision and the principles around the Daily Marak alive for our colleagues in the partnership, and the Daily Marak is a place where we can do that. So the feedback loop needs to continue if we're going to keep our good practice and take it further in terms of improving. So I'll take that back.
And I'll be in touch with you on that.
Yes, thank you. And then care leavers, I do have slides that address the areas for improvement in the report around care leavers. The shortage of move-on accommodation is an area that we have already been trying to tackle and work on. There are plans to bring in additional resource by way of a worker who is dedicated to trying to identify move-on accommodation for our care leavers who are ready to go into their own properties. It's really important that we carefully assess each individual young person to make sure that they have everything they need in terms of skills and confidence to feel able to prepared enough to go into their own accommodation. There is still a shortage of move-on accommodation, and we hope to put resource there to try and increase the number of young people moving out of semi-independent accommodation and into their own tenancies.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Councillor Alexander, and then followed by Councillor Kingston.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned in the section about the experiences and with who need help and protection, and the reasons why we still require improvement. You mentioned a couple of times about the multi-agency networking, and so I just wanted to know, are we reaching out to our partner agencies so they're included in that work straight away? And also in terms of the kingship carers, you mentioned that that it was positive, the work, but I still feel like we could do more. Do we have a kingship strategy? I know that nationally there was a kingship strategy that was published, but do we have a local strategy in regards to kingship? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So
Sure, yes.
I'll respond to the first question about the partnership. The answer to that question is yes. We are reaching out to our partners. So our statutory partners are health colleagues and our police colleagues in terms of the statutory guidance that is set out in Working Together to Safeguard Children 2023. So those are the key people, the first port of call where we would go to have conversations about how we effectively work together. There's a head of service lead on this area. Meetings have already taken place within the period of the inspection and since, with our key partner representatives to address some of the findings that were observed in particular cases by inspectors, and those relate to strategy meetings, identification of risk, and pulling the multi-agency together to make plans to mitigate against risks. So that's the answer. That's some of the work that's happened, and that will continue. What we would want to do later on in the year is undertake audits to check and see if we've seen improvements in this particular area of safeguarding work for help and protection. So I hope that answers your question around help and protection. And then your second question was about kinship and whether we have a kinship strategy. The National Kinship Strategy was launched in late 2023, which you will be aware of. Articulating that at a local level is something that we are wanting to do. It involves a process of looking at the offer made to kinship carers, and that includes lots of things, including the financial offer made to kinship carers. So we are very much looking at that National Kinship Strategy and discussing how we can articulate that at a local level. It will take some time. It's not something that we can do straight away. We have carers who are assessed by a specialist kinship team, so that's already established, with social workers working with family and friends, carers for children, who are presented in a court process as suitable people to care for children under special guardianship arrangements. That process has been established for some time, but in terms of standardising a kinship strategy and publishing an offer, that's not something that is in place right now, but we are considering that and working towards that in the service.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned later on in the year we taking an audit. Would that be an independent audit or in-house audit?
So at the moment we plan to do in-house audits using the support of our independent reviewing and quality assurance unit, who have a quality assurance manager located in that section, together with child protection conference chairs, independent reviewing officers for children in care, and we also have our learning and development social care academy, and those teams sit independently of the operational teams. So when we plan in-house audit work, we work together with the social care academy and with the reviewing and quality assurance service to direct the themes around audit work, but they are independent of the service.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kingston, and then
I hope this is an obvious question. I just want to know about the council's holistic approach to childcare. Like, for example, would adult social care, like if there was a domestic, sorry, example, domestic violence, if there was one partner was attacking the other, would that immediately be flagged up with children's social care if there was a child, and even though the child mightn't be involved?
Yeah.
And then with the child, even if there's no evidence of physical abuse, it's obviously going to suffer some mental abuse.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
it's exposure to conflict, isn't it? So yes is the answer to that question, because the Daily Marac covers
the
adults. The daily multi-agency risk assessment committee, so I apologise.
That's
The
okay.
acronyms, I apologise.
So they are talking to each other, I suppose.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
okay,
the
yeah.
two sides of the service talk to each other, and that daily multi-agency forum covers adults' information and children's information. So it would come into there, and children identified in households where there's domestic assault would feature in those meetings.
Yeah, and the other thing I just wanted to ask, because just continuing the kinship, would kinship carers, would they have the same sort of level of stringent vetting that others would? Because again, we're getting a bit nervous that some families might sweep it under the carpet, sweep things. There might be shame involved. There might be potentially one parent might have been abused as a child. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of the process, yes is the answer. So full checks are undertaken of kinship carers. Sometimes children may be received into care in emergency situations, and we may have to make plans for children out of hours or in very, very urgent situations. So we would do checks with our colleagues in the police in those situations, pending more in-depth DBS checks of adults in the household, all adults in the household, whether they are primary carers or not. So we do follow the same process that we would follow for foster carers, and the same depth of assessment for connected persons is applied as we would for anybody coming to apply to foster or in.
Sorry, Councillor Gallant first, and then Councillor Kwanzaa.
Thank you, Joanne. The question is, in the report it touched on very, very briefly, and you've elaborated on it a bit, but this is the question of unregistered homes, unregistered residential homes. Now, we got, I mean, us non-experts, we can conjure up all sorts of images of this, but can you elaborate on that? Are you saying that sometimes they are the right place for a child to be? I thought that a child could never, it was illegal for a child to be in an unregistered home, but you seem to be saying that sometimes they provide just the right kind of service.
So when we talk about unregistered residential homes, these are residential care settings that are not registered with Ofsted. And
Yep.
by law, any settings providing care for children must be registered with Ofsted. Some of the settings that we have used have been a combination of factors, and they tend to be children who've got very complex needs and perhaps cannot live in residential care settings with other children for lots of different reasons, health and safety being one of the main reasons. And we also have to look at the availability of care settings at the point in time when children require accommodation. So sometimes it's on very rare occasions where we would use willingly unregistered settings. We report those straight away to Ofsted and tell Ofsted if we have had to do that. And we have now got really stringent processes in place to make sure that the care settings have a clear plan to register themselves with Ofsted. And most of our unregistered care settings are in the process of becoming registered with Ofsted.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Kwanzaa, then Councillor Dew.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, my settings for videos are not working, but I just really wanted to pick up and reinforce the point that Councillor Crawford mentioned in relation to, for example, children in situations where they have been domestic abuse survivors along with their parents, mother, father, whatever. I've actually seen, I don't know if this is the case which has informed Councillor Crawford's point, but I've actually had to deal with a case whereby MARAC, Advanced Charity, Women's Aid Charity, the police were all working together and not on the same page with housing. And that really concerns me. So they were all pointing out a particular mother and her children were at risk and inappropriately needed some housing, and that was being ignored by Ealing Housing. So I really want to know, when you do go along, sorry, the person who said that she would be going back to Marek to find out, you know, to get some clarity on this. Forgive me, I forgot your name. Just where do we go to work on the same page? Because from what I've seen, it isn't always working. That is my name.
Can I ask what the question is, please, Chair? What is the question?
Yeah, Councillor Kwanzaa, what's the question?
My question is, when you go back to get clarification from Marek, how can we ensure that housing officers are actually working on the same page? I'm looking at training, that we are actually working on the same page and that we're not end up working against each other. So training may be useful to inform that everybody's on the same page and that training is actually working.
Yes, I think I can answer that.
Yeah.
So we work as you know, as a partnership, and housing feature as members of that partnership. We are all one council, and housing is a department within the council, as is children's social care. So at a strategic level, there is commitment to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
We know on an operational level, housing, and I cannot provide you with data or any information because it's not my area, but we know that the housing landscape is particularly challenged.
Mm-hmm.
With levels of homelessness to try and reduce and things like that. So it's a conversation that needs to continue. Individual cases where families may not be served well by any department of the council, we're trying to work together to overcome these experiences of families. I'm unable to comment on the housing landscape and what has happened in this particular case, but of course, if I'm made aware of situations of difficulty for families, I engage with my housing counterparts to try and overcome those difficulties. And we might not always agree on the way forward, but we certainly work together to try and reach a solution around the problems. So each individual's family's needs need to be taken into account. There is no blanket approach in terms of what we will do when, but we do work and are working together to try and put the best support around families with the resources that we've got.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that was the question more for panel 2, I think it was. Right, Councillor Deer and then Councillor Crawford.
Thanks, Chair. I think one question has been answered already, and the other one is I'm going back to on page 4, number 11 of the Ofsted report, talking about we need to make some improvements. When children go missing from care, and they can be prone to risks of criminality or sexual exploitations, or they can really do anything. So if they are under the care of agencies, it's multi-agencies I'm talking about, how do we provide service? How do we convene immediate child protection or safeguarding meetings with multidisciplinary team meeting? Do we alert others, make them aware of these issues? How do we actually work? We need to make improvements in this area. And this also talks a little bit more on under number 34, the safety plannings of children, vulnerable children. I would like to know what sort of services we are providing at the moment while we are working with the multidisciplinary agencies. How do we deal with such cases? Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of children in care going missing, and pulling the multi-agency together, we would be speaking with the carers first and foremost and trying to understand from the child what is leading to them going missing, because it can be a multitude of factors. It could be that they're not happy where they're living. It could be that they are missing their family and want to go back to their families, and so they go back to their families. It could be that they're encouraged away from their placement by peers. It could be that they are exploited by criminals. So it's really understanding what are the pull factors for children, or what are the factors within their care settings that are pushing them to want to run away or go missing from care. And the return home interviews are an area where we can immediately try to strengthen those conversations that we have when children return and are found. The multi-agency around children in care is good in Ealing. So we have a virtual school who would look at the educational needs of children in care and their outcomes and what's happening for them in their education settings. We have health who have a lead in focusing on children in care and their health. And those are our main colleagues who work together with us to give us the picture of what our children in care are experiencing. Pulling together the network is about having immediate professional conversations around the child to share information about what we know about what's happened in the run-up to a missing episode, and what we think the reasons why, where the children may be, and devise a strategy on how to encourage the children to get back and find them. So that's the area that we want to strengthen, the immediacy of the response to children going missing, and tracking that and monitoring the progress of the interventions.
Sometimes I think children, they don't let anybody know what they are feeling, what they really are facing with. Probably there are multiple problems they are facing with. Could be anything. They might not having a good relationship with the friends or with the peer groups or with the family matters. So it is, I think it's a very difficult area to really to, I don't know what provide services or to work with them, I don't know. Yeah. So,
Yes.
I think if I may reply, it's about building strong relationships with key people. So carers are the obvious first person that you would want a child in care to be experiencing a good relationship with, who can support them, hear them, work with them, to know how they're feeling and what is bothering them. Teachers are very important. People at school might not be the class teacher, it might be a counsellor at school. Pastoral care could be designated teacher, could be head teacher. But having that really strong relationship, you have that person then who is a professional who understands what might be going on for the child. It could be a health worker, it could be a youth worker. So it's knowing in the network who has got the strongest relationship with children and who can tell us what might be going on for children and how they're feeling and why they might be going missing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Crawford.
I couldn't see any reference to respite service, and I'm wondering where that sits in an Ofsted report, because it's sort of in, you know, it's in partnership with education, social services. So, and I think it's really important. And there's always been a problem, you know, whether it's using a centre or a play activity for, you know, overnight stays, or whether quite often is the case is out of borough placements. So why isn't there any reference to that in the report?
Thank you. I might not have a definitive answer on that question, but I will try. I mean, in my mind, children can receive respite in different ways. It can mean different things, and it can appear as different service types. So if you are thinking of perhaps our children with disabilities, when you think about respite, that particular area of practice and service for families is delivered under services for children with special educational needs and disabilities. And the service is separate to the mainstream social care service. The two are intertwined. Children with disabilities do have child in need plans or child protection plans for children in care, but that particular area of the service comes under the umbrella of services to children with special educational needs and disabilities, and they would have their inspection framework, which they will have, and there will be a report about the quality of services to children with special educational needs and disabilities. If you're thinking about respite care for foster carers, this is something that is provided for some children who require it in Ealing. Why it's not appearing in the report, I can't answer that. That will be perhaps related to the children that the inspectors looked at in relation to their care arrangements and whether they were receiving respite or not. That's probably about as much as I can say in response to the question.
Well, for families with a child with a disability, or a foster carer caring for a child with disability, respite is crucial, and you know, particularly if there are siblings. So respite is required to allow the siblings, as well, I'm not going to tell you what you know already. So I am really surprised that that sort of respite so overarching and so important that I am just surprised it's not in. So maybe we can look at that in our work programme sometime, if not this year, next year.
Okay. Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah. No?
No, that's brilliant.
Okay, I can't see any comments you want to make, anything on the report?
No, I think I stopped Joanna from her presentation.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
Starting again.
You got any more to present,
I've
or
got
we have
care
covered?
leavers. I've got the section on care leavers
Oh,
to
okay,
present.
please, yeah.
But it summarises what's in the report. So I will move through my slides, and please stop me if there's any questions
Sure,
in
yeah.
relation
Okay, thank you.
to what I'm saying, if you're in
Yeah.
agreement with that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of care leavers, this was a particular area of strength in terms of our practice and our support provided to our young people reaching adulthood and leaving care. So Ofsted inspectors recognised support from dedicated and caring staff, staff who know the care leavers well, care leavers being involved in creating their plans, receiving regular visits from their workers in line with their needs, and having access to a range of social and recreational activities, including opportunities to link with other care leavers. So overall, the positive feedback was really clear and a move forward since the previous inspection. So move on accommodation we've talked about already. This is highlighted in the report clearly as an area of improvement that's needed for our service, and I've talked about that a little bit in answering some of the questions and what we're planning to do to try and take this forward. Pathway plans for care leavers. These are the plans that support them in their education, employment, health needs, social needs. Pathway plans are well written and co-produced with either young people. They set out short-term action that's needed to help the young people progress. And there's a specialist independent reviewing officer as part of the independent scrutiny service that looks at the plans that are in place for children in the leaving care service. And that's not something that exists everywhere. So the inspectors have commented on that being a real strength in the service. And then finally, the well-being of care leavers is really prioritised, and workers continually assess the well-being of care leavers. There's a really good access to advocacy support available for care leavers who might not be happy about their plans or have complaints that they want to raise with the service. There is a care leavers app that's been designed and launched where it's a platform where care leavers can share information and reach the service using that technology. And there's a really positive impact of having a dedicated health professional in that area of the service to work with the young people and the young adults, getting access to really specialist health support that is just for them. So it's a positive area of the service. And the main area for improvement within leaving care is the pathway into move on accommodation. And that's the end.
Thank you very much. I've only got one question on the pace of activity increase fostering. How are we advertising this to invite more fostering carers?
Okay, so there is a work stream underway to try and attract people to express an interest in becoming a foster carer for Ealing, and Ealing's part of a West London regional fostering recruitment hub, which is led by Hammersmith and Fulham. And we hope that by joining up with other West London authorities, we can maximise potential for raising awareness about fostering across those West London boroughs, using our resources all across that space. So branching out of the borough to do that. And that regional hub is now operational, but it's very early days. So we're waiting for initial data reports to come through that will tell us how many inquiries this has generated. We're looking at the offer for foster carers in terms of rates. So we're looking at how competitive Ealing are in terms of rates paid to foster carers, and we're looking at incentives as well, in addition to their weekly rates of pay, to try and be competitive in the market as a local authority of choice. We're looking at Ealing being a fostering friendly borough, so there are all different ways that we can achieve that. Looking at Ealing being an employer of people who become foster carers and how we support people to do that. So there's lots of work underway that is in train. Some of it is at the earlier stages of implementation, but we're very much looking to try and enhance what we can do to support carers and attract them to come and foster for Ealing. And that also includes marketing. So that includes, you know, once we have our offer clarified and agreed and marketed in the right way, we will have a presence in a lot of places to try and maximise awareness of becoming a foster carer. And we'll need everybody in Ealing to help and support us to do that.
Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry, this is a question. I don't know if it's got there was an answer to it. How much variance is there between rates offered by local authorities? I mean, there's an obvious difficulty there that you could have a sort of price war there. So how's that sort of managed?
We wouldn't want to have a price war in terms of our colleagues and our neighbours, because this is a challenge nationally. So all local authorities need to recruit more carers, and that's clearly set out in the National Review of Children's Social Care. It's a nationwide problem. A lot of places don't publish their rates. So in answer to your question, I can't give you a clear-cut answer in what the variance is across the London boroughs. It will vary in the different London boroughs, but not everyone publishes their rates. So we have to go on what we can see in terms of information that's available to us.
Any other questions? No? No. Thank you very much.
Just to thank Joanne, you for answering a plethora of questions and having that knowledge to hand. I think it's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, we have a date. Next meeting is 3rd October. Yes. Yeah, 3rd of October, next meeting. Thank you very much.